Well, good morning, semi-permanent. Let me have a look at you all. Oh, you look like a really joyous bunch of people. Are you feeling joyous this morning? Okay, good. We're going to have fun together then. Before I get started, I just want to take a moment to thank and acknowledge the traditional owners of this incredible land that we're meeting on, and to pay my respects to the past, present, and emerging leaders who care for this country. You know, many of the ideas I'm going to share with you today are actually embedded in First Nations or Indigenous wisdom, and I think there's a lot that we can learn in this moment in time with so many crises at our footsteps on how to change the way we view the world and our role within it. But to get started, I actually want to ask you guys a really serious question. Now, you probably think about this all the time, as I do, and it probably keeps you awake at night. And that is recycling good or bad? Come on, admit it. You do. Everybody thinks about it. It's like, what do? Do you put that, coffee cup that you're currently drinking in the audience there, do you put it in the recycling when you know it's actually not recyclable? Do you? Come on, admit it. You do, don't you? Yeah, it's hard. So I want to do a little room test. I want to know who thinks recycling is the goodie in the kind of solution set for the sustainability challenges that we have, and who thinks it's the baddie. So I'm going to ask you to raise your arms if you are able to do that. First, we're going to see who's in the team goodie for recycling? Okay, well, it's a lot of you. Who's in the team baddie? Oh, I like you, avant-garde people. And who doesn't know how to raise your arm when asked a question? Oh, I see you there. Very good. I like it when people admit that they don't like following rules or instructions. Okay, so I hate to break it to you all, but recycling is really a big part of the problem that we're trying to solve with the circular economy. So there's this thing called wish cycling. We all do it. In fact, I've been working in this space for over 20 years, and I still do it, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, because wish cycling is when you have a deep desire for the thing that you're holding to be recyclable, even though you know it's probably not. But you have this magical thinking that maybe in some alternate universe, that pasta packet is actually going to be made into something useful again, and so you put it in the recycling, having full guilt alleviation, and go about your life and think someone else is going to solve that problem and the world is going to be a wonderful place. Thank you so much. I'm done now, everybody. I can go. Well, I hate to break it to you. Well, actually, I don't. This is my job, breaking it to you. Wish cycling is a major problem because most people do it. It's about alleviating our cognitive guilt, and because we are good people and we truly do want to see a good future. And so we think diapers and bowling balls and fairy lights are all recyclable when they are clearly not. And simple things that we get kind of duped into thinking are recyclable, like soft plastic packaging, which in most markets is not. So the thing here is that we actually have a waste crisis globally, where our whole entire economy is based on producing disposable stuff, right? We have a system that goes to nature, extracts resources, converts it into a usable good that somebody then pays money for, someone makes money for it, and then once that usable good is no longer desirable or usable, what happens to it? You tell me. Where does it go? The ocean. Landfill, the ocean. Yes, or, some places incinerate waste. Obviously, waste is a huge problem because essentially it is a lost resource. It is a misplaced opportunity. And the problem with recycling is that as we have grown our economies and as we have become more addicted to an economy based on waste and disposability, we have assumed recycling is the solution. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a hole in a boat as you're trying to sail. It does not adequately meet the needs that we have because we are continually increasing the use of disposability at the same rate, not at the same rate as recycling. So in markets where you have a very effective recycling system, people then justify the use of a disposable product, right? We all do it. It's like, it's made out of paper. It's so much better, right? You're all like, she's making me feel bad. I'll make you feel better later, I promise. We'll just get through the bad stuff first. So the first thing is like plastics. We all know oceans problems. Only 9% of all the plastics ever produced in the world to date have ever been recycled. 9%. And in the last 15 to 20 years, we've doubled our recycling production. Sorry, plastics production, not recycling production. We have not doubled that. And globally, only 20% I love stats. Don't you guys love stats? 20% of all waste ever produced has been recycled. So we have this huge amount of material goods that are essentially ending up in the oceans or landfill, and this is a massive problem. It's a problem because we've normalized a society where waste is a given. We don't question the fact that the things that come into our lives that were designed and created by other people are a burden. And they're not just a burden to the planet, they're a burden to our hip pockets, because we pay for waste. You pay, or your parents pay, I don't know how old you are, for local government taxes. Well, that in part has trucks come and pick up your waste and find holes somewhere in the world to bury it in, or goes on a ship and it gets exported to another country for processing. So we actually bear the cost financially and environmentally for poorly designed products. And this is really what the economists call externalities. Externalities are things that are not currently accounted for in the system. So, for example, all of nature, if you go to cut down a tree to make chopsticks, essentially the economy doesn't account for the tree or the services that the tree provides. We only account for the wood once it enters into the economy. And these externalities mean that a lot of people and a lot of parts of the world suffer at the expense of modern, industrialized, hyper-consumerist societies. So we know this. We know supply chains are inherently inequitable and that there is a lot of unintended consequences based on the choices that we make. So one of the key things that we're trying to do with the transition to the circular economy is alleviate these unintended consequences or externalities. And the sad thing is, though, is that we have, since the end of the Second World War, really built an economy based on extraction and exploitation. So the other thing about waste is, let me tell you, somebody has to deal with it. And those somebodies, when it comes to things like technology waste and increasingly with monopolical waste that gets exported from countries like my home country, Australia, ultimately they're going to locations where, due to lax environmental laws, corruption, and often due to needs for economic opportunities, waste is processed in really substandard, unhealthy for the human and for the environment ways, and it's completely inequitable. Right? So not only do we have inequity in the extraction of the raw materials through the different types of slave-based marketplaces that happen. Are you guys feeling bad still? Yeah, good. Okay, we'll get there together. It's all right. I don't really want to make you feel bad. I realize that I'm doing that, but wait, it's a journey. I still have 22 minutes. Hopefully I'll get you back to joyous. If not, you can kick me off the stage. So basically we know that the supply chains are inherently inequitable and we have to transform the economy. Full stop. We don't have a choice. Not only is it because it's the right thing to do as humans, but also because we are running out of resources. And we are also running out of places to put all the waste. So we have to transform this economy, what's called the linear economy, where we take, make, and waste. We have to figure out how to move into the future in a way that is not just sustainable, but is also regenerative, meaning we give back more than we take. Because right now, we take, and we waste. Oh, I'd never said that before, and it felt really good. And this means that we have essentially created a society where we devalue everything that's valuable. Because if I ask you right now what's the most valuable thing to you in your life, I'm almost certain it's not going to be that cup you're holding. I'm pretty sure it's going to be your friends, your family, your dog, in my case. That was funny. He's really cute. I totally just lost my train of thought. Yes, you down there. I'm talking to you about value. So I think that one of the key things is that the things that humans actually value are connection, are relationships, and of course life. We value life. And these things are not accounted for in our current economic system. In fact, in the GDP-based system, gross domestic product, if you are a person who stays home and looks after your children, that is not accounted for in the economy at all. It's a free resource. But if you pay for someone to look after your children, then that's accounted for. So these socially cohesive elements of our society are not accounted for. We ignore them, except for here in New Zealand. You guys have a happiness, wellness kind of index as connected to your GDP. But essentially, globally, we have enabled this system of devaluing nature, devaluing human connection, and this is kind of part of the underlying crisis set that we're trying to solve. And And here's the cool thing about the world that we live in, other than it being the only known life-sustaining planet in the entire universe, which I think is fucking cool, is that nature is this like really amazingly resilient system of which we are all part, right? We put nature in our body every day when we eat. We are in an interdependent relationship with trees and photoplankton, with the oxygen that we exchange. We are nature, and we can learn from the systems around us in order to create solutions that get us into a better future. And that's really one of the key propositions of the circular economy, that we take that linear, waste-based system that's exploitative and extractive, and we transform our economy so that we can have our needs met in beautiful ways, but in also ways that are sustainable, meaning that we can move into the future. And once we transition through that phase of sustainability, we can get to regeneration, where our products, our services, our business models, our societies are designed to give back more than we take. Now, the circular economy, if you're not aware, it has kind of three main principles. The first is to eliminate waste, to have a post-disposable future where we don't have the issues that we're currently facing. To extend the life of goods and services that exist within the economy currently, so making things last longer. That involves cycling resources round and round. And then, of course, to regenerate nature and restore the systems that we've damaged. And this is the cool thing about the circular economy, is that it's really a blueprint for redesigning businesses, policies, products, and ultimately the way we value things. Because critically to this system is we need to change what we value so that we can have the true cost of what it takes to make something. And then once we've changed that kind of value relationship, then we'll start to change the way we interact with the goods and services that are in our lives and also with nature. So, to summarize, the goal here is to eliminate, cycle, and restore. And the cool thing here is it's a massive innovation opportunity. I'm a designer, as was mentioned, and I think this is one of the most exciting things happening at the moment. If you want to get into AI, go ahead. But I think solving the world's problems through technology and design is probably a little more interesting and maybe might get you some good brownie points with your kids. That was also funny, wasn't it? No? After the last speaker, my jokes are just not lasting. He was too good. He was too good with his jokes. Okay, so ultimately, also because you're still unhappy, right? I haven't gotten you out of being unhappy. Okay. Do you want me to talk about the dog again? I should just have a dog interlude video. I mean, like, everybody look, the future is fine. We've been colonized by cute, fluffy things. Anyway, so basically, circular economy is about transitioning the businesses that we engage with. So it's really important that we think about this as a holistic solution. It's not just products, it's not just waste. In fact, recycling and waste is the lowest level solution in the circular economy. What we're actually trying to do is assess what already exists and see how we can change the way they cycle through the economy. So right now, if you have organic waste, like an apple core or something, you put it in landfill. Do you have organic waste recycling in New Zealand? Yes? Do you have biodigesters? You're all like, what is she saying? Biodigesters are really cool. They're machines that mimic like your digestive system, and you put waste in it and microorganisms break it down really fast and it makes methane, which you can tap off and use as a fuel source. And then you get the output that can be used to, grow food and stuff. They're very cool. So anyway, the idea is that you have this biological cycle where things that could benignly go back into nature and not cause problems are redirected into that system. And then all of the technical products that we make, like all of our tech and also the coffee cups because it's lined with plastic and so forth, that we're actually designing for them to be taken back and used in different ways. So we are essentially reconstructing the way things move through the economy so that they add value over and over again. And one of the key principles of this in regards to business decision making is what's called a product as service model. And you guys already know about this. They're already in the market. It's where instead of you buy and own something, you either lease it or you subscribe to it. And essentially, the producer then owns that asset, and they find ways of continually using it so that the whatever's locked into it, like if you've got a drill and you're only going to use it like for 5 minutes, then a tool library is a great way to get that service, and the drill can then be leased out or rented out multiple times, earning additional income to the producer, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a really big part of this transformation. But despite the fact that the circular economy has become an incredibly big policy agenda, we have the European Union who's really leading the way here. We have, even in Australia, we've committed to a circular economy. Finland, there's lots of places around the world that have circular economy policies and lots of businesses who are committing to it. We are actually going backwards a little bit. There's a really great report that's done every single year. I realize I'm still making you feel bad. I'm going to get to the good bit. I have to think of something. So basically, we are going backwards where it was a few years ago, we were at 9%, and now we're down to 7%. And one of the main reasons is because we have an insatiable appetite for goods and services. And maybe it was a kind of COVID period where everybody felt really isolated and wanted to buy things to make themselves feel better. But nonetheless, we are in this system where that waste cycle is continuing to expand. So we have a lot of work to do. We need to find ways of unwasting the resources in our lives. And the things that come into our lives have the opportunity to be redesigned. And this is the greatest challenge, in my opinion, of our time, is how do we redesign everything to fit within the natural world and to mean that we have a future that is actually worth living. And this is this idea of taking a full systems perspective. Rather than just focusing on like how do we optimize for something to be more efficient, we look at the full system. And that's something called systems thinking, which I'm not going to get into the details of right now, but online I've written a lot about it. You can find lots of resources. But the idea is that we're changing our value system and we're figuring out how to create goods and services, products and businesses that are ultimately cycling those resources, adding value to the company, creating economic opportunity, but not with the waste. And as I said, nature has this incredible blueprint for us to mimic or to engage with. And one of the coolest things about nature, if you really spend time, communing with it or whatnot, is that I don't know if you're all having the same images I've got in my head, but went to a number of places. Is that, every single thing in nature is broken down and rebuilt over and over again. It's such a cool system, right? Even anything that dies in nature is just the rebirth for something new. It's so cool. It's an incredible model, and we have this an opportunity to learn from nature. It's called nature-based principles, and there's a lot of work around kind of defining the rhythms and processes that nature has so that we can bring that into the design process and help expand our capacity of meeting human needs in more sustainable ways. You would have known about all the cool biomaterials that exist. There are so many innovation opportunities at our forefront right now, but half of the solutions have not been uncovered. And this is why I think it's such an incredible innovation opportunity, because we can use our creative skills to uncover the kinds of solutions that get us to a better outcome. But most people don't know how nature works. That's the funny thing. Like, we don't spend a lot of time questioning the butterflies and the bees. We kind of just make assumptions. So one of the challenges I have to you is to bring nature into the conversation. Right? So if you imagine every time you're approaching a brief or you're considering how to design a solution or to make a new business decision, you kind of have this like imaginary nature stakeholder, and you could just talk to the imaginary nature or so forth. But ultimately, the idea is that we're ensuring that the impact of our actions on the natural world are coming into our consciousness and our dialogues. And we're making sure, just as Patagonia did, when it recently rechanged its constitution, the company Patagonia, not the country, they ultimately decided that they would make nature a key stakeholder in their business decisions, which is quite revolutionary if you think our capitalist system doesn't really like that. So the idea of bringing nature into the conversation means that we are starting this process of transformation, where I see that regeneration is a goal. It is an amazing aspiration for us to get to. But in the process, we need to move through these stages of change and transformation, where we first acknowledge that humanity has had a negative impact on the natural world, that we rely on the natural systems for our own survival, and that it is the most important thing of our time to figure out how to live within the means of this planet, because even though Elon and all the other rich guys want to go to Mars, I don't see any butterflies there. It would be really boring. It's actually really nice here on Earth. And if you ever talk to an astronaut, who's talked to an astronaut? None of you? Oh, how boring. I know, flex. My friend Ron, he's so cool. Actually, funny, embarrassing story. When I met this guy, Ron, who told me he was an astronaut, I just started stroking his shoulder really creepily and was like, "You've been to space." And he was like, "Why are you touching me?" And I'm like, "I don't know, space dust." It's like, we became quick best friends. So basically, what all astronauts talk of is this thing called the overview effect. That when they go outside of Earth and they look back at this fragile blue dot, the only known life-sustaining planet in the universe, they have this deep sense of responsibility because everything they love is there. right? Everything that is worth living for is here. Yet we spend so much of our time thinking about colonizing other planets or, figuring out how to make versions of ourselves that will then just make us obsolete, when really the beauty of existence is knowing that we are alive and that we have the opportunity to make change. Humans are complex characters. I like to call us hot messes. If you spend time looking at the cognitive science, you will realize we literally have no idea what's going on, and we are entirely driven by our deep-seated emotions, fears, and desires, and that actually most of those decisions are made in the central part of our brain. And we have these things called cognitive biases, which is really cool. Who knows what a cognitive bias is? Smart people. So cognitive biases are mental glitches. We all have them. And what's really cool is that even though people all over the world have different cultures and speak different languages, we all share the cognitive biases. Things like confirmation bias, where you seek out information that reaffirms what you already believe, or sunk cost, when you spend time in a relationship and it's not going anywhere, but you stay in it because you've already spent the time in it. There's lots of them, there's hundreds of them, and what they do is they actually drive a lot of our decision making, and it is then easily manipulated by our industry. The design world is really good at getting people to do shit that they didn't know they're going to do. We're really good at it. And because we understand heuristics and schemas and cognitive biases, we can get people to kind of participate in these unsustainable, unfulfilling systems. And so my challenge is, if design got us into this mess where climate change, ocean plastic waste, a lot of the problems that we have is because this beautiful tool that we created, where we can take materials and form them into things we imagine to have our needs met, to live better, healthier lives. If design helped create that, then surely design can help us get out of it. And to me, I think this is one of the coolest things about the design industry, is that we are creative problem solvers. We love to challenge the status quo. We love to think differently about the world and the way it works. But we have to be willing to build new systems, to be at the forefront of that change. And that's really where circular design is an incredible tool. So ultimately, circular design is about not just creating products that exist in isolation that serve the function of capitalism or whatever else. It is really about transforming the system so that we are designing the full system right from the start. So you are thinking about the entire life. You're thinking about the end of life from the beginning, about the impacts across the supply chain. You're thinking about that interface and relationship with the customer. Full system circularity is really about thinking of how do we transform these linear systems that we're participating in into these circular outcomes. So things like leasing, sharing, repairing, reusing, remanufacturing. There's lots of R words. My favorite is redesign. And there's a hierarchy, right? Not to get into the details of it, but just to say that recycling is one of the lower level solutions because it actually downgrades the materials. That before we would, rely on recycling, we actually want to make sure that there's a purpose to build the product to begin with, that it can't be served in some other way. And then we want to look at reuse systems, and then looking at how we can create, repair, and share, and then remanufacturing and redeploying, and then ultimately down to upcycling and recycling before a lot of products that are still in the market can't be recycled. They have to be safely disposed. So I want to give you some examples of this in action, because the cool thing is this is already happening all over the world. There is so many startups and established companies who are transitioning to the circular economy. There are policies in place in some of the biggest companies in the world to these really cool startups. One of my favorites is Mud Jeans. It's a reuse jean company where you can subscribe. I always get like a hole where I ride my bike. Does that ever happen to anyone else? Same spot. Where you just send it back. They send you a new pair of jeans. They take the old ones. They either repair them, make something new. There's Fairphone, a Dutch company that's created a fully repairable cell phone. They're up to their 4th version now. It's very cool. You can take it apart. You can buy online all the components to repair it. There's another cool company called iFixit that provides all of the repair manuals for all of the technology that gets released. And right now, we're in this really cool revolution over in Europe where the European Union has committed to full repairability, and France was the first country. Those words are so similar. The first country to put in these repair laws. They came into play last year, and basically they made all the tech companies shit themselves, Apple especially. In fact, Apple had never released any repair manuals until this law came into play. If you look it up, they started releasing them last year. And what it requires is any producer who's selling a piece of technology into the French market has to do this self-assessment, these 10 questions on how repairable their product is. And then they have to do this little, they give themselves a mark out out of 10, and then every place you buy that product, whether it be online or in a store, this has to be clearly displayed so that you as the consumer knows how much sovereignty or ownership you have over that product. Do they provide repairable parts? Have they designed for disassembly? Have they provided a repair manual? And they're going to expand this to be about remanufacturing as well. And slowly we'll see a lot of those other R's come into play. And one of the other very cool things that's happening right now, very emergent, is this thing called digital product passports. So basically, it's like a digital twin for a product that has its whole life mapped. So imagine if you were going to buy a car and there was a QR code or some information, you could click on it, it would give you the entire environmental impact, the carbon footprint, where it was made. You could have some chain of custody about whether or not there was third-party verifying if there was ethical labor used. So we can have this information about the products. And then if you're going to be a company who's going to be creating products that are being reused or shared, then you can use these digital passports. So it's already happening. European Union have plans to roll this out across most major sectors by 26, 27. They're testing it right now with batteries. Even Australia is just committed to doing a digital product passport on plastic packaging. So these are the kinds of things we're seeing this tech being used to solve some of these problems and help us gain that information that's going to ensure that full system sustainability. There's lots of really cool companies out there that are supporting this transition. You've got these software packages and platforms that will basically be an off-the-shelf solution. If you're a beauty product, beauty care, what do we call? Stuff that makes you look good. You could basically get the whole system from these third-party providers and have the reuse model. So your customers would be able to return the packaging. You actually are then able to monitor the products. In Germany, they have a law that actually requires any food seller to offer a reusable option along with a disposable. And so you have all these startups now that are providing these really cool reusable systems that are very easy and frictionless. There's a solution that came into play between Unilever and TerraCycle in the US. It's now across most of the US and Europe. It's called Loop. And that is where retailers, you can go and buy your ice cream and your ketchup and all of that jazz in reusable containers. And then either it'll get picked up and then sterilized and reused, or you can return it to the store. There's these different types of kind of more contemporary reuse systems, like when you go to the store and you go to get like nuts or whatever, and that they go everywhere and it's kind of a bit of a nightmare. And you have all this food lost, which then makes it less environmentally friendly. Anyway, so you have some really cool solutions, design solutions. This one's a great one that is really well done. It's got a whole tech-enabled element. It's very sexy, easy to use, minimized waste. You've got furniture companies that are innovating materials. These guys have like a full take-back program, as well as using really innovative composite materials. So they're closing the loop on their supply chain. And this is one of the key things. What we're looking at doing is we're looking at designing solutions that may not be relatively, they might not be right in front of us, but in 2 years it'll be the case. Like these digital product passports are going to really change the supply chain. The European Union has put in these laws. They're really bad acronyms. One's called the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Standards. I know, so nerdy. The thing is that it affects 50,000 companies, not just companies in the European Union. Anyone who sells a product into the EU now has to apply to these laws. So there's going to be a massive transformation in how we produce goods and services, and ultimately how businesses do that. And this is where I think designers have such a cool opportunity to be at the forefront, because in order to make these systems work, we need beautiful, frictionless, sexy experiences. Because sustainability has always been really uncool. Like, so daggy. I can say daggy here. You guys know what that means, right? Yes! I've been living overseas for like 10 years, and every time I say daggy, people are like, what the fuck is she saying? So dingleberryly. Sustainability has really had a bit of an identity crisis for a long time. And I think one of our jobs as designers is to make it cool, sexy, accessible. And really, I think the most important thing, you can design a cool product, you can design a cool business model, but if it is not a really desirable service, then people are not going to adapt to it. So for me, a really big frontier and new opportunity is what I call circular service design, because service design, that interface of how you take that cool circular product and that business model and make it desirable for you to do it, and not be like, oh God, this is so annoying that I'm carrying this reusable cup around. But because you've designed this frictionless and beautiful experience, you've got this normalization of new practices. And then instead of us being addicted to disposability and the convenience it offers us, we'll be addicted to the beauty of circular systems. And as designers, we are provocateurs. We can't help it. We challenge the way the world works. We create new concepts. And we are ultimately problem lovers. I love this about design, that you actually want to break things to make them better. That we spend a lot of our time fixating on things, like perhaps a little OCD. And that means that we have this wealth of capacity to continue to contribute to these solutions. And though people lack agency, not as in design agency, but as in the ability to see that you actually can contribute to this, and that your decisions and choices can help to transform not just your own life or your business or your society or the world. And that happens by doing something called expanding your sphere of influence. You have to start somewhere, and then over time you can build the capacity to ensure that your decisions, that your choices are having a wider, broader, more influential impact on the world. And I like to call this subversive design, because the cool thing about being a designer is that nobody knows what you didn't show them. So I'm always like, why do you show people the shitty, unsustainable solution? Why don't you just only give them the really cool, sexy, sustainable ones, and then that's great. That's all they have to pick from, right? So we have this opportunity to kind of move the needle. And I know I've gone through a lot of stuff. I have a lot of free resources online. I run a school for adults called The Unschool, and they'll share the links so you can go and do like lunchtime sessions, or there's a whole toolkit on activating your own agency. Because really, my key point is we need to redesign everything. We have this opportunity in front of us. The time is now to make change in our own lives and in the businesses and workplaces that we all collaborate and connect on. Because if we want to get to a better future, it's decided by the choices we make today. If we want a happier, healthier, more humanitarian, I would say more sustainable, less like dystopian Mars kind of, Terminator, then the choices we make today are what will define the future that we end up living in together. Thank you.